Good morning, good afternoon, good day, good evening. I hope your day is right. I am Gladys. If it's the first time you see me, over here I make simple, informative tutorials to help you navigate baking and decorating easily. And we're back today. Today we're back to a serious baking buttercream related subject. It is what we call the episode of baking class, where we take all the fun. Okay, let me just reframe that. We are back in baking class where we discuss some baking based subjects which center around either ingredients, their uses, how the baking process, how things interact, ultimately giving you informative bite-sized education on all things baking, which we hope that will enhance your knowledge of baking and help you achieve better results in your baking kitchen. Is that a lot of words put together? I guess so. But essentially, if I break it down today, we are talking the use of margarine in the making of buttercream. And yes, you heard right. The use of margarine in the making of buttercream. We're going to be answering a few different questions surrounding the subject of margarine in buttercream. What margarine is, why anybody would consider using margarine. Is it a good thing to consider using margarine at all? Because margarine is generally formulated or predominantly it is purposely formulated targeted at baking. Why would anyone consider using margarine for buttercream? The intention here is not to encourage you to go do that. The intention here is to have a discussion, give you detailed information that is science-based, that lends to the technique of buttercream. At the end of the class, you walk away with a general knowledge of what margarine as a product actually is, why it is probably better suited for baking instead of buttercream, why anybody would consider doing it, that is using it for buttercream, the pros and the cons, and perhaps the technique of it. And then ultimately, at the end of the class, we will be able to put the whole margarine to test, and then we'll see the result. So when you walk away from the class, you might just wonder, if you thought for whatever good reason you wanted to use margarine, you might probably rethink your intentions. And that is where we are. I hope I've been able to break down our objectives for the class. But whilst we're at it, there is quite a few of you in the chat. Dawn is back. Dawn is lovely. I'm sending you hugs. Tabitha, you too. Good morning, darling. Whew, yesterday really got heavy, and Tabitha, you got missed in the detail. I will find you, darling. Okay, I will find you. We left yesterday, and if you have an email looking for me, I am not around. I keep telling you, I can't do all. Okay, if I'm here, everything else is waiting, and if I'm not here, the waiting stuff get attended to. So I love you lots. But I will find you, okay? Thank you. You didn't get up till 11 o'clock. Tabitha. Okay. Dawn. Dawn, come on, stop it. Dawn, no. Dawn, have you been here on one of our heavy sessions? You want to ask Tabitha? Okay, ask Tabitha or Lollipop. When Lollipop's grandpa passed away, we were literally here. We didn't go to the funeral with her in person, but we attended the funeral in spirit. We made sure we saw her off to the funeral. We held space for her till she came back. When Tabitha work issue kind of went off and literally walked off took a long walk off a short cliff. Was that in July? Okay, we were here with her. So Dawn, never ever feel sorry for actually expressing a real experience amongst human beings. Okay, I know it can be a scary place, and trust is very little, and we are almost self-centered. We care about ourselves so much, and we want to be happy. We are not that kind of people here, and I speak for the entire household. In fact, I speak for the village, okay? So Tabitha and Lollipop, you better check Dawn over there and tell her she doesn't owe us any apology. She can come and cry in the group, and we can hold space. That's all, okay? Osita, Yeah, Osita. Thank you, Osita. Osita, you love me. I love you too, honey. It's the first time we're seeing you in the chat because the name Osita kind of stands out. So yes, Dawn, how are you though? Okay. All of us in baking class, how are we keeping? We are not going to, I mean, we could do the class this way. I could come and dump all the information on you and then you can walk away and be like, okay, I learned something. But people, buckle up because we're going to be doing this together, okay? You are going to answer questions. Please don't cheat, okay? Don't go on Google. Please don't cheat. When I ask a question and I say show by hand, if you know, answer. If you don't know, tell us you don't know, and then we will talk to each other about it. Because the hope here is that you are empowered with information to take with you. Caveat, I don't feel great. I think I'm coming down with a cold. So my throat feels a bit dry, a little bit of unwanted detail, but it's important because since I'm over here, my job is to yap. If you find me literally like closing my eyes, it's like I'm trying to manage what is going on over here. But don't feel sorry for me. I won't give it up for anything. So I have a jar of warm water to soothe my throat. If you have any recommendations for concoctions that might just make me feel better, go ahead, because people, I'm not trying to be poorly out here with a cold, okay? But them little people have gone to school and they brought back stuff and I don't feel great this morning. That is enough of it for today. Let's get to baking class, okay? How do I look pretty? Honey tea, lemon. Good morning, Steph. Steph, lovely, good morning. Oh, God. Start sipping lemon. Do I have lemon? Shoot. The last lemon was what I used up yesterday. Okay. Oh, I hate flies. I hate flies. Okay. The lemon was the last one I used yesterday. Okay. And essentially I have to go and get whatever I need, whether it's lemon or honey, because I have yeah, I've just run out of honey too. Yeah, I've run out of honey. Why? Because I told you people what I have for breakfast, which is the chia seeds pudding, and I drizzle a little bit of honey on it, and I've just run out. But I've swapped the honey for pure maple syrup because of blood sugar issues. I'm like, yeah, maple syrup. This is pure maple syrup that I use. So yeah, I'll have to go pick up some honey and lemon. So for now, I'm just going to have to elderberry. Okay. Okay. And there are some suggestions for the flies too. Noted, lollipop. The electric tennis racket. Okay. Right, people. Why do I feel like I have oil at the corner of my mouth? Okay. I will check on the recommendations for later, but in the meantime, let's get to the subject of our discussion today. So, we have heard margarine, right? If you haven't heard the word margarine before, put your hand up in the chat. If I don't see a hand in the chat, if you haven't heard margarine before or you don't know what it is, put one hand in the chat. If you've heard about margarine, know what it is used for, put two hands in the chat. Let's see. Okay. I have margarine here. This is a brand by Lidl, and I think it's the same that is carried by Aldi. But you have common brands like Flora and Stork, which are very popular. Tatiana is in the chat. Good morning, lovely. We're sending you hugs and prayers. Philippians 4:13, you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. It's one more day, and you can breathe. So finish hard, Tatiana. Okay, so I'm seeing too, there's Dawn in the chat. Dawn has heard of margarine, knows what it is used for. Jackie is back. Morning, honey. Tabitha is putting 2 hands. Lollipop, yeah. Okay, Lollipop is saying hi to Jackie and Tatiana. Okay, right. So at least for the number of people in the chat, okay, those of you who are baking focused or experienced in baking in one way or another, understand what margarine is. Now, here's another question. Would you consider, because I am going to assume that your knowledge of margarine is closely connected with margarine for baking, correct? If the assumption is to put a hand up in the chat. I am assuming for those of you who have heard about margarine or used margarine, you've closely associated it to baking. So my assumption is that you have come across margarine, you've used it for baking. Put a hand in the chat if that is the case for you. Okay, Lollipop says mom uses it for sandwiches. Does mom use it for sandwiches as in spread as she would butter in a sandwich? There's Steven's vapes. Steven, hello there. We're not sure what you've just put in. Is it a thumbs up for us or it's a thumbs down? We have no idea. In fact, what we said you should put in the chat is definitely connected with what we are trying to learn. So when I asked to put a hand in the chat, it's because I'm just looking to communicate with you. So let's stay with that for a minute, just so that I can get some feedback for what we are trying to achieve over here. But oh, you use it. Okay, so Stephen, okay, so I am assuming Stephen was giving us a thumbs up. So Stephen uses margarine for baking. Yep. So for all the hands I am seeing in the chat, your connection or your knowledge of margarine is closely connected with baking. Here's another question for you. Would you ever consider using margarine for buttercream? Because today we are considering margarine for buttercream. And for those of you who are just joining us, the objectives of our class today is identify what margarine specifically is, why it is mostly used for baking and not for buttercream, why anybody would consider margarine for buttercream instead of butter, the pros and cons of using margarine, and then going down to the technique and why everything we've discussed, put it into the action of making the buttercream with margarine and then seeing what the result is. And then maybe in the next episode of our live class, we will then use that buttercream to pipe and see what the results are and probably attempt to cover a cake is, so that we'll start from not knowing and then finishing with, oh, actually, we know this for a fact. And then you get to make a decision on whether it might be a good thing. Because I can tell you right now, this is not a product for buttercream. But don't take my word for it. The goal is to actually establish why that is not the case. Why that should be the case, that don't use this for buttercream. Because over here on the lives, most people who come in a couple of times will ask me, why can I use margarine for buttercream? And my brain goes, why would you? But I also understand that my intention comes from a place of knowledge and understanding, and not everybody has that. And besides not understanding what this is formulated for, more so not for buttercream, it is also set in good reason. People want to cut costs because it's efficient. We'll discuss all of that. So buckle up, take a seat, and pick a pen and a paper, and let's cover this ultimately and then demonstrate it. And at the end of the demonstration, you will have the answers you need. So for those of you who Lollipop, you always have a way of bringing things back home to us, isn't it? Just like I'm sat by my window with my roll, like Lollipop. Okay, let me pull up by my window too with a roll and see how I fare with that. Not much. Oh dear. Sana is back. Sana. Sana says margarine is a substitute for butter. Yes, it is a substitute for butter. But is it formulated for the use of buttercream, and why would you or why would you not? That is what we are trying to understand today. So Tabitha is asking, Dawn, do you have a specific brand that's not dairy free? I read all the ingredients on the box and it had no dairy. Lollipop. Okay. We call it shortening in the bakery. Stephen says, I have some Vitador margarine. I found it in Lidl and it's a bit salty, delicious, and it's affordable. Yep. Okay. So, I mean, for most part, I think let's clarify. So, question number one, what is margarine? For those of you who have come into some contact or gained some knowledge or experience with the use of margarine, you know what margarine is. And simply, without having to bore you, if you know nothing about margarine, take it from me. It is a butter-like formulation that is processed from vegetable oil. Okay. It is processed to set solid or semi-solid, right? So it's a fat-based product, okay? It's generally fat-based product, and the main fat element here is from vegetable oil or sometimes seed oil that is pressed down, okay? So chemically processed to behave like butter, but it's not butter. So it is formulated to look like butter. It is definitely not butter. Doesn't contain the product, the natural product that is butter, okay? But it is formulated to be used for baking, in that it behaves like butter, presents as butter. The ingredients are nothing like butter. So in simple terms, think of, if you're comparing, I didn't want to make it a comparison between butter and margarine today, right? Because if we did that, we'll be talking about it in the context of baking. But yes, the subject of butter and margarine being one or another thing or separate items is a whole discussion. Maybe I'll come back and discuss that, because if we start doing the comparison, we will muddle the whole subject and get lost in detail, because there's a lot to unpack. So stick with me here so that we can cover our goals and objectives. And then in subsequent videos, maybe I'll come back and do a detailed comparison or analysis between the two. But for those of you who have some sort of knowledge of margarine, we can all agree now that margarine is not butter. It is formulated to look like butter, behaves like butter, but it is processed from vegetable oil or seed oil, chemicalized and pressed down, presented sometimes as solid or semi-solid. And generally butter is sort of semi-solid because it is set, but very quickly you can work with it and then it begins to break. So that is essentially what margarine is. Now, just a quick detour to say margarine is a form of shortening. It is not shortening. Let's be clear. Shortening's fat, the difference here is that both of them are from vegetable or seed oils, okay? Both of them have that in common, which is margarine and shortening. However, shortening has a higher fat content than margarine. So let's just say margarine is a derivative or some form of shortening, and so will a baking spread. It is slightly confusing because they're all the same thing. Margarine, shortening, baking spread, all the same similar things, not the same items. Because amongst the three, shortening has the highest fat contents, which stands at almost 100% with no additional ingredients such as water or liquid substitutes and excesses, okay? Baking spread is next, following on from shortening. You have baking spread formulated specifically for baking with a high fat content of nearly 80 to 85%. And the rest is additional additives, ingredients, and water content. And margarine comes in at anything between 60 to 80% fat. So depending on the product or brand, the fat content may be range between 60 to 80%. But if it was specifically baking spread, so if you go to your local market, supermarket, and you look at the aisle looking for margarine, baking spread, or any other substitute, what differentiates them besides brands and naming is the amount of fat you have in it. So it's a form of shortening, but it is not shortening. Let's be very clear about that. That's the little detour. Now let's come back. We've defined what margarine is. Now, why is it generally or primarily formulated for baking? Well, because of the way it is made, it's supposed to support a better baking outcome because of the liquid in it and other ingredients that will help tenderize your bake. There's an ongoing argument about how better butter is to margarine. That argument is settled by general preference and individual choices. I can never impose on you why you should use margarine or butter, okay? The choice is based on you, what you need, what your outcome. I think the part where we can both probably agree so much but also just disregard is the health benefit. At the end of the day, baking, as in when you're talking high ratio baking of regular, not specific dietary needs, we're talking regular baking, we're talking your regular cakes, not your diet-based ones. If you want to eat a good old brownie or a good old cake, that's not healthy food. So the argument of but butter is better than margarine because butter is healthier falls flat to me. Because if you're going to eat cake 5 days a week and you're using butter and you're eating cake 5 days a week, between the sugar, whether brown, white, whatever color it is, to all-purpose flour, to almond flour, the whole damn thing is not healthy. So moderation is what we preach here. I'll leave it as that. So here's the thing. But margarine is formulated for better baking outcomes, but it is set in recipe, individual preference, and choice. That's all, okay? However, why would anyone consider using margarine for buttercream? Why? Can we unpack that? Have you ever thought of using margarine for buttercream? Okay. Lollipop says no. People, I need your attention in class, okay? It's me in my kitchen in a dark room. If I was just throwing information at you like I know it, you'd be bored to death. So let's get engaged in the class. Let's see, right? So, okay. Tapita says, I won't tell you that. I will tell you that I use butter in everything growing up. My family used margarine. I absolutely hated the taste of it. When I became an adult, I switched to butter. Okay. And never looked back. So like I tell you, the subject of butter is just set in a preference, depending on what you are using it for. As a baker, I get to choose between, depending on what my goals and objectives for a particular thing is. We all know in terms of baking, butter has the superior flavor, okay? In terms of texture and crumb integrity, they are probably just neck and neck. And there's possibly an argument for the fact that you get a more delicate and softer bake from margarine because of the water content in there and the additional additives, and because butter still sets hard at room temperature, it will lead to a more tighter and dense bake for you. Not dense as in the outcome being dense, but because it sets, the integrity of your crumb is tighter and less delicate, if you know what I mean. You would have to just bring it back to a bit of a warmth above room temperature for you to get that delicate fall from it. Whereas a margarine, depending on recipe, yields better crumb. I've tried it and I can tell you that for nothing. So it's neither here nor there. The intention is just influenced by choice, preference, and objective at the time. So for instance, in terms of personal choice, what I am doing will determine what I am choosing. Some days I mix oil with butter here. Some days I go for margarine on its own, depending on what I need. At home, I spread butter on my toast because I like the taste and mouthfeel of butter, right? But on a winter's day when the butter is solid on my work table, it's annoying to keep having to scrape butter and it's still hard unless I put it in a microwave. The problem is when you are making your toast and you're all flustered and this is not scraping, you almost want to throw the whole thing in the microwave for it to melt, forgetting that the foil might spark fire. So you know what? Some days, you know, the margarine spread style ones, the olive, whatever it's called, it's what I have used. I prefer butter, but no, I can't be asked with its inconveniences. So it is neither here nor there. Circumstances will dictate that for you, and your own choices and preferences will determine what you choose. And it's neither here nor there. But a question I was asking is, Dawn is saying butter is for pastry and buttercream. Yes, you know what? When it comes to buttercream, I make the point for what it is worth. It's not worth the compromise in terms of mouthfeel and quality. And the whole point of this exercise is to determine that and solidify the whole thought process by undertaking the making of the buttercream using the margarine. And then we can see the result for ourselves. But for what it is worth, I won't compromise on using margarine for buttercream. Like, it's just not worth it. But one of our goals is to determine why anybody, as much as I may say it's not formulated for buttercream, why would anybody want to use margarine? Can you think of any reason why anybody wants to use margarine for buttercream? Leave your thoughts in the leave your thoughts in the chat. The question is, can you think of any reason why anybody would like to use margarine for buttercream? Yes, Jackie, generally, if you've gone back to my videos, you will find that most of the cupcakes are baked and cakes that stacked cakes. I've used this product right here. You'll see. So I would say I use margarine for all my baking, because I did preface that by saying what I am doing will determine. So for instance, if I was baking for a client who, because as a custom cake maker, I get to choose what the client needs, you see. So if I spoke to a client who really would prefer their bake to be a certain kind and outcome for them, I wouldn't mind swapping for butter, which is why predominantly my recipes are completely adaptable. You can swap the ingredients around for similar or same results with no adverse outcomes for you, right? Because I like the choice of being able to change things around. So for instance, my vanilla cake recipe, it was tried and tested primarily with margarine, but over time during the adaptation and retesting process, I figured you can use butter, you can use parts of butter and oil, and you can mix margarine with oil, and it will still yield you a great delicate bake. The contrast of butter and margarine are just like, they have very significant outcomes that are inherent to each item, and then there are some commonalities when you kind of think it through. So in terms of crumb quality and integrity, is one better than the other? Not exactly. That is simply because butter doesn't yield you a worse outcome. It is because of the nature of butter inherently, because it's a solid fat that will set at room temperature. So for instance, when you make a cake and you put it in the fridge and it's butter based, it will behave differently to margarine, but it doesn't affect the quality or integrity of the crumb. It does affect presentation in terms of how delicate and soft the crumb is. That isn't a good or bad thing. That traces back to the ingredients in both and how they inherently affect texture and outcome. That said, we know butter is superior in taste, mouthfeel, and flavor, whereas margarine isn't. So you have to almost make an adjustment and compensate. But for the amount of vanilla or flavoring you could add to one or the other, by the time you add in buttercream, you are not sitting and thinking, my cake is either butter, and that I prefer butter to my. It's neither here nor there. I hope I am making sense to the argument. So it's neither here nor there. The good thing is that the recipes are completely adaptable, so I get to choose what I need to do when it requires it. Okay, Jackie saying I'm gonna try to test margarine against one of my bakes to see how they are. But let's be careful though. Let's be careful. If your bake requires a certain technique and the technique calls for butter, stick with butter. For instance, if you're making an angel food style cake and it calls for melted butter, please don't substitute it for margarine. I think the subject of margarine here and its effect and outcome is closely connected to method as well. Let's just be clear on that. And the method of preference here that is in the subject, assumably, is the creaming method. Okay? So I know sometimes when I used to be in a cake group chat, right? Someone is having problems with their recipe. And the moment the subject gets like, oh, you can swap one thing or the other, suddenly they get all excited and they feel like, okay, let me go and change this and see. No. Let's look at the method. That if your method is calling for creaming method and it doesn't require any additional liquids or anything, then yes, you can swap the solid fats just to see what your outcome is. But if you're making a cake that requires a completely different methods and ingredients and the ratio are completely different, please don't swap it for margarine, even though you can melt it. Okay, so for instance, if the recipe is calling for melted butter, don't go melt margarine, because when margarine melts, the composition is slightly different to when butter melts. It is very complex. You have to be mad about cakes. Oh God, no. I say that for what it is worth, Auntie Jackie, okay? Because I've seen people like, oh, okay, then I'm going to swap, and then you lose context, and they come and they're like, oh, I changed this and it didn't work. I'm like, okay, let's go through it. And it's like, oh, you didn't need to do anything. Just stick to what you have. Anyway, let's get back from the detour. You know what I'm like? We will make it all the way down over there, okay? And leave our objectives. So we have identified what margarine is, which we have answered. It is a fat-based butter-like product that is nothing like butter. It is formulated from vegetable oil, primarily rapeseed palm oil or palm kernel, okay, or some form of seed oil. And it is processed to set solid or semi-solid, and it is formulated generally for baking. The fat content in margarine ranges from anything between 60 to 80%, the rest being additives and water content in it, right? So for instance, when we look at our ingredients here for something that we call margarine, the ingredients are rapeseed oil, palm, and then palm kernel. The water content is 1.2%. There is salt, there is emulsifiers. By the way, let me just add in, sometimes it has milk fats also. So for instance, I will tell you, Flora used to have buttermilk as part of their ingredient composition. And then they got rid of the buttermilk because they wanted to make it all-inclusive, vegan friendly also. So most margarine on the market, I wouldn't say all, most margarine on the market has completely eliminated any butter fat in the composition of ingredients, making it completely vegetable oils in there, right? So over here, there is the citric acid, there's emulsifiers. You could go down a list of things, but the water content and additives is important because then it is weighted against the amount of fat you have in here. Generally, we know margarine to be formulated for baking because of how it presents and its positive outcome to baking, right? It is not known to be a product formulated for buttercream. However, we are simply answering the question, why would anybody consider margarine for buttercream? Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? We will go through the good and the bad, ultimately demonstrating by undertaking a whole session where we use the margarine to make buttercream using the 1:2 ratio, and then we will see. Ultimately, when we get that done, we will get to using the buttercream to either frost on a cupcake or try covering a cake or deriving some piping detail just to see what the result looks like. By so doing, you are armed with actual information besides why you probably shouldn't be considering margarine. But one of the reasons I can think of lollipop. In my floral plants, it said sunflower, rapeseed in varying proportion, coconut oil. Okay, can you see? Faba bean, preparation. There's emulsifiers, sunflower lecithin, and then there's neutral flavoring. Lord, what are we eating? You know what? These days we could be eating any and everything, okay? We are going to bake a cake with margarine in class. Stephen is asking, we are not baking cake with margarine today because we've already done that. We are covering using margarine to make buttercream. So today, this is probably what we are going to do. But it almost strikes me, by the time we finish the theoretical aspect of the class, we might have to close off and then come back on the next session to do the demonstration. I think that's the way we are going to go, because we're breaking the class up into 2 sessions just so that it is also tolerable for the people who watch on playback. Because when we are on the live, the experience is so engaging for all of us. But when we check out, unless I'm going back to seek some feedback, I don't rewatch this. And when I have told you to go and rewatch it, I actually tell you, watch it at 2 times speed, because it's intense, it's a lot of yapping, and if you're not part of the conversation, it can almost feel like a draw, like it drags out for you. So yes, a long-winded way to say, Stephen, we are not baking with butter, we are not baking with margarine for baking sake. We are using the margarine for the making of buttercream, just so that we can answer the same questions we have discussed already. I hope that kind of makes sense. That said, why anybody would consider using margarine for buttercream is set in their lack of understanding of the product. And I don't say that in a demeaning manner. I say that in realizing that a lot of us, including myself, my knowledge of baking and baking ingredients have grown over the last decade and some, as I have gotten so interested in baking, as my interests and curiosity has extended away from different parts of my business and intention to grow, right? Because when I started baking 10 years ago, if you'd asked me what I know today between margarine and butter and everything else, I couldn't tell you. And that is a matter of fact, right? But as I have grown in my business and I've landed on YouTube and my curiosity has grown, and of course, the ability to be able to teach and inform has come along the responsibility of understanding what I am given, right? So I say, when people want to use margarine for buttercream, it is simply set in, they don't know any different or understand the product. And sometimes people just feel like it's affordable. And yes, it's affordable. This at 500 grams is £1.19 for 500 grams from my local Lidl, against £2, I think, is it, on a sale, it's £1.99 for 250. Okay, can we do some math here? In the cost of living crisis, the math isn't mathing. Okay, people are trying to cut costs because they are trying to serve the customer better in terms of value. But who is determining that value? Okay, Because are you giving them a cheaper product and compromising on quality of taste and mouthfeel? Because for me, maybe my value proposition is a great tasting cake. Do you see what I'm saying? Who determines the value? You decide in your business. I am not judging when I say this product right here is not for buttercream, but you do you, sis. Auntie Jackie says, you're all cracking me, but hey, how are you?
Oh, I'm alright, you?
Oh, I'm alright. How was work?
Yeah, it was good, thanks.
Okay, great. Well, I'm coming down with a sore throat. You've got any suggestions?
Well, yeah, that's what we've had.
Well, I'm always the last to catch it. I have the better immune system. Oh, you poorly people. Right. Lollipop says, I hate the total at the end of my shopping. 2 full bags of for life, and it's £70, and that's like 3 days tops. Lollipop, I tell you, I can get, you know what, I understand the sentiment. The cost of living crisis is really a thing. Listen, over the weekend, right, I asked the big producer to stop by and pick me up some shopping.
We're walking back via golf course.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Okay. Are you driving though?
Yeah, I'm driving.
And then
it'll be like 10 minutes longer than when we come straight back. That's
not a problem, as long as you're not like.
No, we won't be late for you.
That's fine. I made some chicken.
Good, I'm starving.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, see you in a bit.
Yeah.
People, you're in my house. Welcome. Okay. At least you know I'm having chicken for dinner. Oh Lord, this cost of living crisis is a thing, people. It is a thing. I can look. I asked the big producer to stop by Lidl actually over the weekend, and this is Saturday. And guess what? If I could, the shopping list is over there on the phone. I would have pulled that for you. I said to him to get me 2 crates of eggs, milk, and some bits and pieces. Nothing extraordinary. Guess how much that came up to? £27. That was on Saturday. And I was back shopping on, today's Wednesday, on Monday. I was back shopping again on Monday. And how much did that shopping come to? Nearly £60. And that is, the good thing is at least that is for the rest of the week. So from Saturday to Saturday, that is nearly £100 of shopping. And that is a whole meal in the evening, because there are 2 people who don't exist here in the day. So a breakfast, not a lunch for me, and a dinner for a family of 3. It's a little over £100 a week. And we're talking 7 days. The cost of living is a lot. You know what, Dawn? The tip of buying reduced item is good. I am just you could buy them if you know what you're doing. Because some days when I have lazily walked into shop later at night and they have things that at reduced prices. In fact, on Monday, I got my carrots from, it's the fresh carrots, the bags, from 69 pence to 46 pence. So that was a good thing. But sometimes I am just like, I get overwhelmed by the whole process of shopping. And so the extra effort to kind of mull through a lot of items to get the underpriced ones just gets too much for me, because it does require a lot of intention and planning. And I'm not always planned. Like I literally walk in the shop thinking of what I think I'm going to cook. And then I end up with 2 bags of things that I will never cook. That's by the way. Sophie is back. Do you use free range eggs? Yes. I use free range eggs, but I don't think the argument, my reason, I think sometimes when the question is asked, there's intention about it. I don't think the reason why I use free range eggs is set in the propaganda about free range eggs. I don't. I buy the Lidl and Aldi free range eggs, the box of 12, and they yield great cakes for me. I have no qualms. For consistency purposes, I have stuck with that product. If that were to change, will I die on the hill of free range eggs? I don't know. But what I can tell you is the ones that are packaged for mixed sizes of 15 that are cooked or whatever, I don't like them because they create such inconsistency of product for me. Because if you're a business, you have to be able to maintain consistency of product from shop to finished product. Do you see what I'm saying? So that's the intention around it. But the simple answer is yes, I use free range eggs. We are finding, you know what, when I tell you, we have a lot in common as people. Can we see? We are all struggling with shopping and the budgeting. We are finding out some are better at doing it than others. Okay? And that, you know what, Tatiana, we have already identified you're the organizer in the household, okay? Come organize our lives, get us all fit and healthy so that we can win, okay? It's our life's outcomes connected to the choices we are making, i.e. the disorganized. That's by the way, okay? This, yo, Damien, yo, what's up? Nothing is up. Just a bunch of people up here in this corner of the internet talking baking, talking margarine, talking life, living cost, and budgeting issues. That's all. Right. Now, we were discussing, let's go back to the subject of topic. We were discussing why anybody would consider using margarine, even though it is not usually recommended. And the number one reason may start with the fact that they don't have any understanding of the product and how it behaves in the making of buttercream. So they might just think, for affordability's sake and for convenience, let me go with margarine, without recognizing what they might be settling for. The other obvious reason is also cost cutting. We've discussed that. The cost cutting might be a tempting reason for anyone to want to substitute margarine for butter with margarine, because we've already done the math. This is about £2.15 for 250 grams, and this is £1.19. This is £1.19 for 500 grams. So which one would you go for? Of course, if given the opportunity, you would go for the cheaper one. But on the subject of why cost cutting, there's also the subject of delivering value, because closely connected with cost cutting is delivering value to the customer in terms of what cost and to the baker profit, right? But there's also a compromise, because we know the formulation of margarine isn't the same as butter, and there are like compromises to be made. Whilst the product in itself is not inherently set for making buttercream, if you chose to go for buttercream, margarine for your buttercream, you're definitely compromising on structure, quality, and it comes with a whole litany of problems that you probably won't anticipate, because it's not so much valuable when you end up making the buttercream, okay, after saving yourself a few pennies, and then the buttercream doesn't pipe and it is breaking and it is looking all not great out here, and it's not firm, and it is the texture is not good, and you have to take the whole thing up and start all over again. It will cost you in time. If the customer is not happy with their cake because it doesn't taste great, it has cost you in terms of customer experience. And those are things that are so immaterial and yet so tangible you can't put money on. So you decide where your value is. But for me, the pennies isn't worth it for what is the loss. Sometimes you have to think through these decisions. The ingredients and butter and margarine is not even close. Tabitha, we know that. Well, the good thing is that at least we are discussing the subject. So by the end of it, we will have some understanding. So cost cutting may be a reason. Whilst it's not typical for you to use margarine, cost cutting, lack of knowledge about the product, and maybe a tempting reason may also be because if you don't know the product very well, you may be tempted to believe that because it whips up great, it might be a good reason to swap it for butter, because butter takes a while. So convenience, okay? Convenience. So if we went back to our objectives, we've covered what margarine is. Show by hand if we understand. I know some of you are just joining the chat here. You know what? When we come to baking class, people, I have to have notes so that we stick on the subject. So here is our class objective, okay? Baking class, using margarine for buttercream. That's a question. Is that a good or a bad thing? What we are covering here is what is margarine? Why would it be used in buttercream? What are the pros and cons of using margarine for buttercream? And what is its composition to butter? A comparison of that. Those are the subjects we are covering in class. So we have already covered what margarine is. We've defined that. We've come down to why anybody may be tempted to use margarine for buttercream, even though it's not primarily formulated for use as a buttercream product, right? Now let's talk about the pros and cons of margarine, okay? Can you, based on the discussion so far, what are some of the pros of margarine here? Okay, put your thoughts in the chat. I'm waiting. Auntie Jackie going, when the ingredient is so long you can't pronounce the words, you know you are not eating food. Is that simple? Like, oh Lord, somebody tell them. Tapeta says, oh, Jackie says it's affordable. Thank you, Auntie A. Auntie J. Yeah, it's affordable, so it's budget friendly. Okay, so that's a good reason. Tabitha, you Googled it. It's okay. We don't have cameras in your home to find out who is cheating. Nobody will judge you. And given the opportunity, if I was sitting on Oxford set exams, I'd be chat GPT in my answers. Okay? So not to worry. Just tell us. So what are some of the pros of using margarine for buttercream? Okay? Auntie Jackie says it's affordable. We have already discussed that. Okay, it's vegetarian. Sophie, thank you. Yep. For my vegetarian friends and vegan. Is it vegan? Yeah. What's the difference between vegan and vegetarian? Okay, no. Spot the confusion for a minute. Vegan are the people who just don't do animal-based product at all in any shape or form. Right, I know that's just a simplistic explanation of that, right? And then vegetarian may consider fish, so and other things, but they are more generally vegetarians. Like, it speaks for itself, isn't it? Anyway, it's vegetarian. Okay, milk, milk and eggs. Okay, so vegetarians do milk and eggs. Okay, and fish. Okay, vegans don't. Okay. Tabitha says the reason it's dairy free. Okay, let's focus on its properties. What are the properties of margarine that might make it a pro for wanting to use it for buttercream? What? So that's the property. The properties of we have considered the factors, which is it's affordable, it comes as a dairy free product, can be vegan friendly. We've discussed that, but we're talking the property of the margarine itself. What would make margarine, like as a product and the way it is formulated, what would make it a plus for using for buttercream? I will note, because it comes out of the fridge soft. because of its semi solid nature. Because I have only brought this out since I've been talking to you in class. Okay, literally I've brought it out, and whereas if it was the butter, I had to literally keep the butter at room temperature depending on how I wanted it. If I wanted a room temperature, it should have been brought out much earlier in the day, except this has been sitting here since morning anyway. But you can't just pick butter up from the fridge and go straight to baking. You have to either bring it to a soft form in some way, whether you're sitting it over warm water or you are microwaving it. And that in itself will come with challenges. So in terms of its formulation, it looks more convenient to actually be drawn to using margarine, because you can literally bring it up and use it straight away. Connected to that is also the fact that by nature, it whips up lighter, quicker compared to butter. But you know what? Those are two strong reasons connected to the pros when we're talking about its formulation. They are still not strong reasons enough to compromise butter for margarine when making buttercream. The cons though, so let's talk about the cons. We've spoken about the pros. The cons, I can think of the fact that because it has so much liquid, we have already determined that the fat content in margarine is anything between 60 to 80%, and the rest is just water and additives. And we've already determined the additional ingredients that is added to margarine. So it doesn't make for a good yield because of its texture and ingredient composition. That's a con. What are the other cons you can think of? If you were, I know it's a new territory for you, especially if you've not used margarine for buttercream. It might be a bit hard to conceive, but here's the part where you can Google stuff. Okay, let's engage in the chat. Margarine is Tracy just summarized it. She's like, it's a couple of ingredients away from plastic. Girl, you didn't have to just spell it out like that though. Let's all eat our plastic in peace, okay? Let's just, you know what? The adage, ignorance is bliss, comes to mind. Is it a maxim? Like, ignorance is bliss. If you don't know, you don't know. You just eat your cake and just mind your business. Oh, Lord. We are all full of microplastics. Sophie, you know what? The focus on food options these days is just hard, okay? Because of lifestyle choices. Because when you think about the hunter-gatherer man, do you think he was worried about microplastics? Okay? That man was walking in the fields for days on end looking for something in nature to eat. And even from hunting to cooking and eating it, everything was different. And we have evolved as a society in so many good ways, but that has also come with so many. We are sicker. We are a sicker generation. We are sick. There is more research, so there is more knowledge. And you're like, why are we so sick when we have such great advancement? And it's because the advancement has creeped into all aspects of everything in our lives. It's like, it's just crazy. Okay? So let's just yeah, Tracy says butter is expensive and it's so easy to make at home. True. But you think how many people will consider that? Okay, even as a baker, how many people will? I mean, our bestie Megan says, I don't want to make my own butter, and she has all the help. So how about us mere mortals? It is such a pickle if you think about it. But yes. See, Dawn saying, Tabitha says, my kid didn't know we could make butter at home when she was little. Oh, wow, that's nice. You had so much fun showing her how to do it. Oh, okay, Auntie J, pray for us, pray for the state of our world, and yeah, the Lord will hear you. Have a good one. We'll catch you in a bit. Okay. Right. Dawn says, I remember my nana getting milk from the farm and making butter. See, that has all changed. These days we go to the shop and we buy that milk that is supposed to be fresh, but that milk has got things in it to extend the shelf life. It's a mad one. Okay, it's a mad one. But people, let's not deviate from what we are discussing. We are discussing what are the cons of using margarine. We've discussed the pros. What are the cons of using margarine for your buttercream? I can think of one con on top of my head, which is that it's not very stable, okay? Because it has too much water content in it. And actually, the way the water content behaves in margarine compared to butter is different, okay? So yes, whilst the water content, there's water in butter, butter still is up to 80% fat. And this is a natural product, okay? This has about 60 to 80. So the composition is not even certain of how much butter you have here. And you have a little over 20% but water here. And you have about 15 to 20% here in butter. But the way butter behaves, because of its composition, the water in butter is going to aid better result for your buttercream, better than this over here, okay? So it will definitely affect texture in a bad way. Now, I've been playing with this all this time since we've been talking, and it's definitely gotten softer than I need. So have we covered the subjects we came to discuss concerning margarine for buttercream? Here's a question for you. If we, obviously, the next phase of the class is to demonstrate the result of making buttercream with margarine, right? That's the next step of our class, right? But here's a question. Let's go back to our goals and objectives. Do you feel like you understand the choice between butter and margarine for making buttercream specifically? Do you think you if we were not to do the demonstration at all, do you think based on this theoretical discussion here, you have an understanding of why you should choose maybe butter instead of margarine? If it's a yes, put it in the chat. What is the one thing you have learned in this baking class in terms of the use of margarine specifically for buttercream? Because the subject here is not using margarine for baking. In fact, we live in that world every day. When I come to bake a cake, we talk about margarine and margarine and margarine. But I will come back in subsequent tutorials to discuss a direct comparison between butter and margarine here, so that we can all learn something. But put in the chat maybe a thing or two that you've learned in this class concerning the use of margarine for the making of buttercream. It's not called margarine cream, it's called buttercream. Sophie said yes, she's learned something. Okay, Lollipop said if you were broke, go for it. If you can splash, go for butter. I thought frosting was buttercream. Okay, Sophie, you've thrown a little thought here. Frosting, buttercream is a frosting, but think of frosting as an umbrella under which all other fillings and buttercream options come under. Does that make sense? I have discussed the subject of frosting in a podcast style, I've discussed the etymology of it and why there's confusion on the subject matter. I think you want to check that video out. It's a podcast. It's not visual, it's audio, but it's on the channel. So if you go on the channel homepage and you click on podcast, you'll see a video where I'm talking about buttercream, but it's an audio style. So frosting, think of frosting as an umbrella under which both buttercream and non-buttercreams come under. And primarily the distincting factor here is frosting doesn't necessarily contain butter. Anything that doesn't have butter, or anything that is used for filling into a cake or covering into a cake, could possibly considered frosting. So for instance, marshmallow frosting. Marshmallow frosting doesn't necessarily have butter, depending on what recipe you're using, but it's called frosting. So I think I haven't caught up on that video for a little while, but that video is set in a lot of research so that we are not confusing ourselves. But buttercream is a type of frosting. Does that make sense? So when you say buttercream, it's a short form of buttercream frosting. Does that make sense? It's very confusing, but catch that video up where I break all of that down. And the part where I discuss the noun and verb versions, it is very like boring, but it's also educative and informative to kind of give you clarity over the different types of words we use in baking. Oh, Tatiana is out. Okay, girl, we're sending you hugs for today and tomorrow. We love you and we will see you soon. Finish hard, okay? Finish hard. We're looking forward to having you back full time when you have some rest. Good luck and have a good day, okay? That's Tatiana. So, yes, we've discussed margarine. That's a full class, okay? Now, oh, yeah. Let's see. I was just wondering if the chicken is chickening. Anyway, let me just get some water for my throat. People. So we've discussed this. It's like Lollipop, don't confuse me. Okay, so Lollipop said it's like a strawberry not being a berry, but a banana is a berry. I don't know what that means. I'm confused. Look, before I derived the research, I was very confused. I'm like, why is this so confusing? And by the time I finished, it's a 20 minutes long audio style thing. And by the time I finished it, I was like, I see why. I literally had to sit and research and script it in a way where it makes sense. So yeah, it is, the word frosting, buttercream, and everything else in between can be a little bit like confusing. That I can tell you. A strawberry isn't a berry. We found something today. What about Lollipop? You are taking us down the left side to a place we didn't ask to go. Now you are being asked, is that a blueberry? Is a blueberry a berry? Yes, a strawberry is a strawberry is what? Yes, a strawberry is botanically not a berry, but a banana is. Okay, Miss Google. No, I'm kidding. I feel like I've been lied to my whole life. Don't we? You know what? Now I feel like I am getting old because I learn things from my son every day. And I'm like, why did I not know this? Ah, lollipop. Lollipop says a starfish isn't a fish. What is it then? So butter. So what is it then? So starfish not a fish? No. What is it? Maybe I need to go to school with my kid today. I have life questions. You do. You do. I mean, a fruit had seeds inside. So a strawberry is... Please, can we just stop it already? Can we? I mean... Can you see how confused we now feel as a society if we cannot determine what a fruit and a vegetable is? We are so confused. But a banana doesn't have seeds. Okay, lollipop. Go on, Professor Lollipop. It's an... I cannot even... Well, let's throw in a platypus and then suddenly the whole conversation is over. Because it's a mammal, it doesn't have a stomach. It's... Okay. My point is, it's all confusing. But a banana doesn't have... A banana... Tomato is a fruit? How do we survive the kitchen cooking and baking and we don't know what these... I mean, Tapita, it just means that we don't need to be professor. We just need to know how to do the thing. Okay? Nobody is going to let you write an exam in the kitchen because you bake cakes. Tomatoes are fruits. I mean, whilst we're on tomato and fruits and starfishes, for those of us who wash our chicken, we have good reason to wash the chicken, isn't it? What do you think? Do you wash your chicken? Because you don't want to eat anything dirty. You wash your fruits. Why can't you not wash your chicken? Lollipop. If a tomato and cucumber are fruits, does that mean we are eating a vegetable salad? People, you know what? Listen, yeah? Okay. Sit tight. Let me clear up. Express germs in the splashing of the water. No. You haven't met an African. We don't do that splash. I don't know what you're doing, whether you're having a shower with your chicken. I don't know what you mean by your splashing water. Please, my people, let us not have a fight, okay? You know what, Dawn? If you sat at a coffee shop right now, okay? Everybody is looking at you thinking, why is she laughing, looking on her phone screen? Because she's out here socializing with some mad people who watch their chicken and who say tomato is a fruit. Okay? If I bought from the grocery shop, no, I'm not washing it. But I do look over it. Lollipop. And Tapeta. We are Between Lollipop having fun and not washing the chicken. I know everything you said is true. I don't know if I want to play by those rules. Christ, Lollipop. You know what? We came for the class. And for the last two, let me catch my breath. And we'll be back at 3:45, where we'll cover the demonstration. Okay? Let me tidy up and then come back, and then we'll cover the demonstration of making the buttercream. Don't go anywhere. I will see you all soon, okay? Look, check back in check back in 15-20 minutes. We'll be right back, because I just want to tidy, and I also just wanted to break the class up so that it's digestible for playback viewers. Okay? I will see you shortly. Wash your chicken. Wash your chicken.